Hey everyone, Jacob from CVP, and today we are comparing the ZEISS Nano primes to the Cooke SP3s. We've reviewed both of these lenses before, so if you haven't checked those out, can via the links here. But in this video, we're going to be comparing them against each other so you can choose what lens you may want to grab for your next project. Both Cooke and ZEISS have long histories in cinema, with them both producing some legendary optics for motion picture use. However, the looks they are known for are very different. Cooke is normally associated as being warm, vintage and characterful, whereas ZEISS are more known for being clean, neutral and sharp, but both can be used to create some really great looking imagery. They are just two very different styles that will work for different people and productions. The SP3s are inspired by Cooke's legendary speed panchro design, whereas the Nano primes have been inspired by the Supremes, which pull from a range of ZEISS's previous lens designs. As of the release of this video, the Nano Prime set consists of an 18, 24, 35, 50, 75 and 100mm, whereas the SP3 set consists of a 25, 32, 50, 75 and 100mm. Having the option to reach for an 18mm with the Nano Prime set will be very useful, as while 25mm is pretty damn wide on full frame, having the option to go ultra wide will be really handy for some projects. Cooke actually make both an 18 and 21mm in their larger Panchro I Classic full frame series of primes, which the SP3s are inspired by. So I'm hopeful that Cooke may bring out an ultra wide for the SP3 set. The maximum apertures of these two lens sets are quite different. The SP3s have an aperture range of t2.4 to 16, whereas the Nano primes are all t1.5 to t16. This stop and a half's worth of extra aperture is quite substantial in the real world. Having this extra aperture is going to make the Nano primes really useful in lower light scenarios. But T1.5 on full frame is very shallow, so pulling focus can be a bit challenging. When we shot with the Nano primes in the real world, I would regularly stop down to around T2 or 2.8 because of just how shallow T1.5 is. The physical designs of both of these lenses are very different. The SP3s really are incredibly compact compared to Cooke's other lenses, and even the Nano primes. The Nano primes are decently compact, but when compared to the Cookes, they look massive. However, they are a good bit faster as we mentioned earlier, which means it's inevitable they're going to be larger. They also differ quite a lot in their weights. The SP3s weigh around 500 grams on average, whereas the Nano primes are closer to 900 grams, with some of the larger lenses getting close to 1.2 kilograms. This is quite a substantial difference, and when factoring in the size too, it will make a difference when using the lenses handheld on smaller cameras, or when putting them onto gimbals or even the Ronin 4D, where you can easily use the SP3s but may struggle with the size and weight of the Nano primes. The Nano primes are more traditionally designed and sized cinema lenses, and they are built incredibly well as you'd expect from a ZEISS cinema lens. Focus and iris rotations are really well dampened and feel fantastic. The Cooke's mechanics feel decent too, but maybe aren't quite as consistent across the set. The Nano primes feature a 95mm outer diameter for clamp-on matte boxes, which is more standard than the 64mm of the SP3s. Both lenses can also use screw-on filters. The Nano prime takes 86mm filters, whereas the SP3s use 58mm, apart from the 100mm which has a 77mm thread. The marks on these lenses are also very different from each other. The ZEISS Nano primes are more traditionally designed, with a very similar layout and feel to larger cinema lenses. They have a 280-degree focus throw with nice clear spaced out markings, with your witness mark located on the side for your focus and aperture. They are singular scale, so if you want an imperial or metric, you'll need to grab which one you need at your point of purchase or rental. The SP3s have a pretty unique mark layout. Your witness mark is located on the top of your lens, which I find personally better for solo operation. The focus rotation is also much less than the Nano primes at just 160 degrees. It's also non-linear, with more rotation given towards close focus than towards infinity. It's also dual scale. They both feature standard 0.8 pitch gears for focus and iris control, however they are very different. The SP3's focus gear is much wider than the Nano primes. This makes focusing it by hand much nicer. It's obvious that the lenses have been designed around completely different workflows. The SP3s are clearly designed for solo operators. The shorter focus throw, larger gear to grab onto, and top marks make it much easier to use in this kind of scenario. However, the nano primes will slide into more traditional crew-based work much better and allow for much more precise focus control when used with the correct focusing accessories. The larger gear on the SP3 really does make a difference though when using them handheld, especially in colder environments where you may be wearing gloves. In our recent shoot down near Dungeness, it was really cold, and sometimes we did struggle focusing with the nano primes, and the larger gear of the SP3s would have really been appreciated then. Both lens sets have an interchangeable mount system. They are both pretty well designed and easy to remove and shim yourself if you do need to do it. The SP3s and nano primes come standard as Sony E-mount. The nano primes currently don't have any mounts available other than that, but this system will allow for mount swaps. The SP3s have optional mounts for RF, L and M mount. This makes them very versatile and easy to use across pretty much all modern cinema cameras that have a mirrorless mount option. ZEISS's E-mount for the nano primes does have electronic contacts for metadata pass-through, which can be very helpful, whereas the Cookes have no contacts at all. This means that with the nano primes you can get on-camera iris and focus information, in-camera lens corrections, automatic IBIS focal length adjustment, and extended data for workflows that require it. There are currently no other mounts available for them, but I'm hoping ZEISS will expand options for them very soon. Looking at their close focuses, we can see that they are pretty similar, but on average the SP3s are slightly better, with the biggest difference being the 100mm. Both of the sets aren't macro primes, so it may be worth grabbing a nice macro to go alongside either of them. Both sets of lenses are aimed at covering full frame sensors, and they both cover well, but do have some light fall off when wide open. However, none of the lenses have hard vignette, which is good. If you want to see these tests in full, head over to our uncut edit of them on our Vimeo, link to which is in the description. Right, let's move on to some more controlled testing. These are going to be very quick comparisons, so if you want to dive in more in depth with each of these segments, make sure to check out the full reviews of both the sets of lenses, links to which are pinned in the comment below. For these tests, we mostly shot them on the Sony Burano in 8K 16:9 in XOCN LT, and then processed the clips through Resolve. A lens's flare characteristic is a very subjective thing. For these examples, we grabbed the torch and blasted down the barrel of each lens. We tried to keep the torch in the same position, but did move the camera as we changed focal lengths. Their flares are pretty different, and the SP3s flare much easier than the nano primes do. The SP3s have much more going on here. They have rainbow character, and some focal lengths have veiling glare present as well. What you prefer the look of will come down to your personal preference, but the SP3 definitely have more character than the nano primes do, which also can produce good results, but are definitely more controlled in comparison. Looking at our bokeh tests, we can see that they have slightly different ways of rendering out of focus areas. Both sets are decently consistent across each focal length, but they are different to each other. The SP3s have a more defined edge, but slightly less colour aberration around them too. The nano primes have clear texture in their out of focus highlights, which is a result of aspheric grinding, whereas the SP3s are clean from such texture. When stopped down, we can see the different iris designs shaping our out of focus highlights. The SP3s use a 9-blade iris, whereas the nano primes use a 12-blade iris. Both can produce really nice looking out of focus areas, but the Cookes are maybe a touch busier and more textured. It's also worth considering the difference in depth of field between T1.5 and T2.4, as this will change the kind of imagery you can get with either lens. Let's take a look at the distortion of each lens. The 24mm nano prime has slight barrel distortion, whereas the SP3 25mm has pin cushion. Both the 32mm SP3 and 35mm nano primes are well corrected. Both 50mm of each set has slight pin cushion. The 75mm nano prime has pin cushion, and the 75mm SP3 looks well corrected. And lastly, both of the 100mm have pin cushion. Instead of talking you through each chart test of each focal length of lens, I'm not going to include every single focal length and t-stop of each set here, as it will get quite long, so this is an abridged version of my notes. Both sets of lenses exhibit fall off towards the corners of frame, and have chromatic aberration in some areas. The nano primes perform well wide open, and when stopped down to T2.8 or T4, corner performance really does improve. Wide open, the Cookes have fall off towards the corners, which is common with their optical designs. However, stopping down does improve their performance here, but I would say they're not quite as clean as the ZEISS lenses. But given their design philosophy, this isn't too surprising. The nano primes do have a good amount of chromatic aberration wide open across the focal lengths, but stopping down does improve this, and they do resolve really well. For our breathing tests, I am pulling focus through the entire focus range quickly, so this will look exaggerated versus a real-world focus pull. We can see that each focal length has some, they're getting worse towards the longer focal lengths, apart from the Nano Prime 100mm, which has less than the 75mm Nano Prime. I think the SP3s on average have a little bit more than the Nano Primes though. Cooke and ZEISS are giants in our industry, and these lenses are the first steps for them both making dedicated mirrorless mount cinema lenses, and it's a massive shift in the filmmaking industry. These two lenses are both very different from each other. The mechanical design and overall image are so different, and what makes sense for you will depend on what you prefer and what you need from a lens set. The Cooke SP3s offer a more vintage feeling image. They are lower contrast, flare easier, and offer similar performance to Cooke's modern Panchro classics in an incredibly compact housing designed for solo operators. They are a joy to use when operating solo, thanks to their short throw and wide focus gear. The ZEISS Nano Primes offer a more neutral and general clean modern look. They are sharp, fast, and versatile optics housed inside typically well-built ZEISS housings. They can be operated solo, but lend themselves to more controlled sets with crew. Lenses are always an incredibly personal choice, so if you're seriously considering buying some, I would really suggest reaching out to us to book a demo today where you can come into our offices and get your hands on the lenses yourself. Details about that are down below. Anyway, let us know what your favourite set was down in the comments below, and if you like the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content, and thank you so much for watching.